Hey everyone, it's Ian Heller with Distribution Strategy Group. Welcome to our Technology Leader panel entitled Using State of the Art Analytics to Understand Performance. Man, this is going to be a great discussion. We've got a couple of wonderful guests. We've got Kristen Tom from White Cup, who's, on a lot of our shows and always does a brilliant job. And then Brian Hopkins, who actually works for Distribution Strategy Group and has a very, very extensive background in distribution. So we'll bring those two on in just a moment. But I got to tell you first, we are in the software business ourselves. We don't compete with anything White Cup does or any of our other sponsors. But if you're looking for an MRI on your business from the customer's point of view, you should look into Customer Experience RX. It's fantastic customer satisfaction software that you can parse data from by geography, by job function, by customer size, any way you want. And it really provides an in-depth look by location. It's highly actionable. It's tactical information as well as strategic. You'll love it. And then if you want an MRI in your business from the employee's point of view, you should look into Employee Experience RX, which is employee engagement scoring software. It's the same kind of thing where it gives you really, really detailed feedback. And then Demand RX helps you understand the sales potential by product line, by location for customers and for prospects. These are invented by my genius business partner, Jonathan Bine, PhD. And we have a marvelous, marvelous economist, economics and statistician named Macy Dodd, who works for us, who has really tuned the data and provides tremendous insights into these from these for the output from these products. So they're really good. They're worth a look. Okay, so let me welcome to the show Kristen Tom, Senior VP of Customer Experience from White Cup, Brian Hopkins, Chief Operations Officer at Distribution Strategy Group. Brian, Kristen, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Welcome. Thank you so much. Good to be here.
I am excellent, my friend. It's good to see you two again.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I know. It's been like 20 minutes.
I know.
Hey, Kristen, can you give us an overview of your background and also what White Cup does? I mean, I know you guys make more than one product, but you have hundreds and hundreds of distributor customers, and your reach throughout the industry and your data set is just enormous. So give us a little thumbnail description of, what you do there, what your career was, and then, an overview of White Cup's value prop.
Yeah, absolutely. I am our Senior Vice President, Customer Experience at White Cup. I've been with the company for 12 years now.
Wow.
And in a whole bunch of roles. So when I first started out at White Cup, I was running implementations and onboarding our new customers, which was a great way to learn how distribution businesses ran, how, the ins and
Yeah.
outs, the challenges that different folks were having, and how, software could help tackle those, and specifically how analytics could help tackle those, which is why I'm excited to be here today. After working in implementation for a while, I worked with our support team. Again, I had more kind of first line experience working with folks day in and day out, getting to know their businesses and what they needed. Worked with our development team for a while. Ended up running our product roadmap for a couple of years. So determining what we're going to build next. And again, that grew out of these relationships I was able to build with distributors, getting to know them and their businesses and what made the most sense for them. And I now still own our product roadmap at White Cup, and also have on my team all of those customer facing teams on our side as well. So my support team, professional services, all those folks are bundled together, and we call it customer experience because that's the most important thing, is how can folks use our products. We focus on products that are built specifically for distributors. So Ian,
Yeah.
to your point, that's what we're thinking about all day, every day. How do we better integrate data sets, build these really wide data sets that we can use for this strong analytics foundation? And we offer CRM on top of that. For us, CRM is always better when it's built on top of and powered by analytics. It's not a standalone Rolodex situation. It's not
Yeah.
a management tool to watch over what your sales reps are doing. It's powered by the analytics that come from these data sets so that folks can be more effective at their jobs. And that's what we're really passionate about, is bringing these analytics to folks to use in their specific roles so they can sell more, have provide better experiences for their customers, and grow their businesses that way.
Yeah, and I mean the integration between analytics and CRM is so essential, and it's
Mm.
essentially zero effort at Whitecup because they come that way.
Exactly. Pre-built,
Yeah.
that's the way we go.
Right.
And yeah, that we feel very strongly that CRM without that analytics foundation, you're not going to have great adoption.
Yeah,
CRM
right.
becomes that dirty four-letter word for a lot of folks in the sales organization. You're not going to have
Right.
adoption, and you're not going to have the outcome that you want out of that product. Yep.
Cool. And one of the things I like about this discussion is we've got someone with an extensive technical background and then someone with an extensive distribution background, which is you, Brian. So, I mean, you've been, at several really interesting and very different distributors that I'm sure used analytics in very different ways. So why don't you walk us through your background?
Yeah, so I, like you, Ian, started at a branch in South Side of Chicago, at a Grainger facility, and worked my way up through that organization for about 19 years, and then transitioned to another big company called HD Supply for a few years. And then I really learned what distribution was about and started working with companies that were in the 100 to $400 million range. And all of them had one thing in common, is that they all had data that they had to work with. I really learned at Grainger how to use data as an advantage, and I'm really excited to see where tools like with Whitecup, what they do and others do, where it can take that data and how it can help. So I'm looking forward to this discussion for sure.
Yeah, but on the pre-call, on the planning earlier, we were talking about how when we were at Grainger, and I think maybe even still today, branch managers and district and region managers didn't see margin.
Yeah.
Isn't that
Yeah.
incredible? I mean, it's such a
It's a
fundamental
foreign
part.
concept. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And that's why you said, you kind of had to leave Grainger to really understand distribution. I
To
felt
learn
the
it.
same way. I remember being in my first consulting assignment after Grainger with a big electrical distributor, and I was like, holy cow, I need to just learn. I don't understand how these guys do
Yeah.
business. It was so different from what I learned, And so I think, when you come out of Grainger, that could be a mixed blessing, right? Because you do learn some best practices that are really applicable, but a lot of stuff that you do there is only done there.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing that I learned out of there is great training, great way to build a business, but to really understand how it works and operates at the ground level, the small to medium sized distributors is where it's at, because that's where it really happens.
Yeah, and that's really in the heart of your market, Kristen. So why
Yeah.
don't you tell us, and I've got a bunch of questions here. And audience, please jump in with questions if you've got them. We love your audience questions, and this is a unique chance or an unusual opportunity for you to have a couple of experts address your questions. But let me start with this, Kristen. How do you define state-of-the-art analytics? I mean, that's the name of this program, but how do you define what state-of-the-art means in the context of distribution, service, or supply chain?
For me, state-of-the-art analytics starts with a robust data set. You've got to be able to pull in data from various different sources, your ERP system, your e-commerce tools, marketing, customer service, all of your customer interactions, different data sets that you might have in your business, and be able to put those together in a way that makes sense. And so that doesn't mean just a data warehouse sitting out there that your IT person or that one really smart person down the hall from you in their office can access and get at. But the data is ready to go for different folks, and it's available in these bite-sized chunks that make sense for their role. So for me, it's about starting wide with that big net of these different data sets that make up a distribution business, and then being able to process that, put it into usable chunks, and feed it to folks in a way that they can actually take some action on it.
Got it. Okay. And Kristen, we have a question already directed at you from Jose. He wants to know, let's see, Kristen mentioned having analytics enhance your CRM for better adoption. What kinds of analytics do you suggest to include in the CRM to really help your salespeople? Wow, that's a great question, Jose. Thank you so much. What do you think, Kristen?
That is a great question. Yeah, I would start simple and easy. Start with things that are kind of a pain and kind of time suckers today for your team. Quote follow-ups is a great one. You have quotes in your ERP system that are over X number of days old. You can push that to your CRM system, have automated quote follow-ups directly to your customer, reminders to the sales rep, and get those things moving. Notifications of orders, just making sure that the order process is being communicated to the right folks in the business. Again, you can put a layer of automation on top of these actions that are happening and provide some of this insight. For your sales reps specifically, sorry, I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here, but
go ahead.
I'll keep
Yeah.
it short. For your sales reps specifically, your customer service folks, giving them insight into that entire customer experience, it will pay off really, really quickly. So having a customer dashboard that your team has access to that has, of course, your current quotes, your open quotes, your order history, things like that, but also a step down from that. What aren't they purchasing from you? What were they purchasing more of last year at the same time that we're seeing a drop off now? When do we expect them to order again from us based on their prior history?
Right.
Do we have outstanding AR balances that are, causing issues? Where do we see profitability with that customer? It's just giving these directed pieces that can help them have better conversations with their customers.
Man, I'm glad this call's being recorded because people should replay
great,
that.
yeah.
So, Brian, I ran two questions by Kristen. One was, what is
Yeah.
state-of-the-art analytics? Second one is, what analytics belong in your CRM? Do you want to add anything to her answers?
Well, I would just say that it's shifted, right? State of the art has always moved along from
Sure.
the initial reporting, and you're right, Kristen, the guy down the hall who had the access to the report that you needed to figure out your answer, to now it becoming more predictive. And what do I do next? And that's really where state of the art in my mind comes to play, is not about what happened, because we all been in meetings where we talk about what happened last month and everybody has an explanation. It's more about what data can you serve up to people that say what most predictably is going to happen.
Yeah, got it. Okay, good. And we have another question now from Mike. How do you ensure quality or accuracy of the data inputs? And I want to connect that to a conversation we had in our prep call about trust. Okay. And Brian, you identified two kinds of trust. One is, do you trust the data? The other one is, do you trust the leaders who are giving you the data and maybe interpreting it for you? So, and that all relies on the quality and accuracy of the data being right to begin with, right? So, Kristen, how do you ensure quality or accuracy of data, and how do you make sure that that data is then trusted and the leaders are trusted? What have you seen that distributors do well that result in that outcome?
Yeah. So any tool that you put in place, you should do some basic data validation, right? That's kind of a given with any of these tools. Do that gut check feel with a couple of, key customers, make sure that their data kind of passes that initial gut check. Get into early iterations of whatever tool you're using for analytics. Get in some of those folks that are going to be a little bit more resistant. Get their feedback and what they say may be a trouble spot of using data. Get that sort of sometimes negative voice in the conversation really early. But the other thing I would tell, and this is a conversation I have at least weekly with distributors, is that don't get so caught up in this idea that your data has to be perfect, because that's a state that you're frankly never going to reach. None of us are, right? We all have inconsistencies in our data, things like that. And frankly, what I see in our tool and others out there is that using analytics surface the issues pretty quickly with where you might have issues in your data, and will help you identify those as outliers more quickly. I think the tools are coming so far in that regard that this fear that we need to spend, a year cleaning our data before we can really get started with analytics, that's a little bit of a thing of the past. I encourage folks to get started. You're going to find where you have some issues in your data that, again, we all have those issues in our data, and you'll be able to kind of silo those as outliers and still get really helpful stuff really quickly. So don't get so caught up in this idea that everything needs to be in this perfect idealized state before I can get going, because that'll really tie your hands quickly, and you're missing out on a lot of opportunity there. The tools will help you find those outliers of, oh, yep, we're missing a data set here, or this is wacky. We got some numbers from 5 years ago that are a little funny and are throwing things off, and you can handle that at that point. It becomes a little bit more manageable at that point than the big scary, I need to have perfect data before I can get started.
Yeah, I got to tell you, we consulted for many, many years before we started doing what we do today. And every time we met with a distributor, I mean, probably without exception, as far as I can remember, early on, there's this confessional, forgive me, Ian, for we have terrible data.
Yes.
And
Very
and everybody thinks their data is the worst. And, it's like, we can't all be the worst, right? I mean, and but distributors are actually overloaded with data. I mean, many other business, if
So
you're a
much
retailer,
data.
you don't even know who you're selling to most of the time, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you have to use like secondary research methods to know who's coming in your store or going on your website, and not distributors. They know the business name and the title of the person who bought and everything else, so they've got this huge data advantage that they don't recognize. So Brian, in your journey, getting back to the question of trust, how do
Yeah.
you make sure the organization trusts the data, and then they trust the leaders delivering the message that's based on the data?
Yeah, you almost have to do it from a personal level, right? Because the leader has to be able to, number one, let go of some of the data, right? There's a lot of organizations that hold certain pieces of data from their teams, right? We talked about with Grainger, they held margin. I ran a $230 million district and I didn't know what the margin was,
Right.
right? So the leaders have to let go with some of that level of trust on the data itself, that the people that are using the data know what to do with it. And then the other thing is you have to suspend belief to a degree when you see the data, because a lot of us have been in the industry a long time, and you see something that's predictive, or you see a piece of data that's been analyzed, and you're like, I don't believe that, because that's not what your own
Mhm.
experience might have told you.
Right.
So
Right.
you've got to be able to balance that experience with, boy, there might be some insight here that I'm just not aware of. So
Yeah.
that's part of, you got to have some internal trust in what you're seeing, and trust but verify, as my friend Ron Paulson used to say. But you got to be able to let go of the data as a leader too, and that's sometimes hard.
I think Trust But Verify was
Absolutely.
Ronald Reagan. So I think RP picked that up
I got to give it to RP though.
from
It's
RR. Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah. Hey, okay. So, we've got analytics that they're transitioning, right? So we've gone from descriptive, here's what happened, to diagnostic, here's why it happened, to predictive, here's what's going to happen, to prescriptive, here's what you should do, right? To actually proactive, where an agent at some point in time is going to actually do things for you based on the data. So we all know agentic AI is coming, right? It's probably going to be bigger than LLMs, right? And these software agents are actually going to accomplish tasks like interface with your customers, or plan your travel, or contact your customers with marketing campaigns, whatever. I mean, this stuff's going to happen automatically through software agents. All of it totally relies on good data. I mean, if your data is bad, your agents
Yeah.
are going to be offering, ice cubes to Eskimos, or whatever the appropriate analogy is in your world, right? Electrical parts to plumbers. So how do you prepare for that world? Because I mean, the people who use it looks to me today that people who use software agents well in the future, it's probably 2, 3, 4 years out, are going to have a huge productivity and service advantage over those who don't. So it feels like if you're not getting your data, your analytics in shape today, that's not just the underlying data, that's learning how to use them and how to apply them. You're going to be at a big disadvantage when those tools come online. Kristen, am I right about that? And what do
Yeah.
you advise customers
Yeah.
to do? Because I know you guys are working on this stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you're right about all of that. And to bring in the idea of trust, I think is also really applicable here, to be able to trust when we get to those agentic tools and things like that. I think having a basis and understanding the analytics today, it will help that transition as well. So, Conversations we're having with folks are, again, get started with analytics, with automation around analytics, role-based delivery of analytics. Start getting your folks thinking about the information about your customers and your business, your vendors, things like that. Get the information and the data behind that becoming part of their everyday now really helps set the stage. And as we mentioned a few minutes ago too, I think as you start to use analytics more broadly in your business and making it part of people's day to day, you surface those pockets of where that bad data might be that needs to get cleaned up. So when you're putting it through an agentic tool or something like that, we're gonna have a better outcome at the end of that as well. So my big message is just get started. Don't be too scared about starting today. There's very low risk ways to get started, even if you have that fear that your data isn't where it needs to be today. There's some low risk ways to get started and be moving your business and your business culture in that direction. You're going to be ready for that next step coming.
Yeah, and
Go ahead,
I was gonna
Brian.
say, I think it's also important when you say you get started, yes, take data quality seriously. Start with locking it down, right? I've been in organizations where everybody had access to the data and it could be changed whenever anybody felt like it, and it created chaos and a mess. And I think people are starting to realize that's not a good practice, but you've got to start with locking it down and having a single source of truth and start getting serious about it. But I'd also say start with small automation to make sure that you're on the right track. Don't start with, this ginormous project, you using the data you have, and all of a sudden you figure out 3/4 of the way in, your data is not clean enough, so it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So there's ways to go about it, but I say get serious about that data quality right now if you haven't already.
Yeah. It's a little like a muscle, I feel like, in your business. You got to kind
Yeah.
of train it and build it up a little bit. So start small with those automations. That's a great suggestion, Brian. I love that.
Yeah, and it feels like a lot of the agentic actions are going to come out of the CRM ultimately, because any of the customer directed ones. So it feels like it's a real advantage for you guys that maybe you didn't even see coming, Kristen, that agentic is going to rely on tight integration between the analytics system and the CRM.
Absolutely. Yeah, we joke, or I joke a lot now. Again, I own our roadmap, right? And the idea of like 3-year roadmaps now is
Yeah, right.
a little
Yeah.
bit wild in technology, right? Like we've got to adapt quickly on
Yeah.
our side because there's so many new features and opportunities available that we can get into our products for our customers. It's exciting, frankly. It's a lot of fun to work on those projects.
Yeah, I mean, roadmap years have become dog years, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay. And Brian, because you've been in several different distribution companies, what do you think are the key sort of data and organizational infrastructure enablers that separate organizations that succeed in analytics from those that struggle?
I think the ownership is one of the first ones. Too many times nobody owns the data quality, and it's seen as maybe an IT project or a cleanup project. So I think having somebody that owns this is probably the first place to do it. And I don't know how many companies do this today, but that is probably the most important thing that companies can do today is have somebody own it, so that it starts to be an important part of the organization and not just some side project.
Do you want to add anything to that, Kristen?
I love that answer. I would take it maybe one step further is have somebody that owns that. And Brian, I think you're right that historically this has been like an IT person, and we're seeing that shift to somebody on the business side sometimes, somebody in sales or sometimes somebody in marketing, things like that are having sort of a broad understanding of the business motions, not just technical side, but the business outcomes there and connecting those dots together. So having somebody own that data integrity and sort of that single source of truth, how data should flow through the business, and then have those folks with the understanding of your customers and how your customers want to interact with you and that type of thing help connect those dots to these different roles in your business as well. Just kind of keeping a little bit of a downhill flow of this information in mind of where is it
Yeah.
going, and what's the overall picture of where we want to end up there at the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can play this out a bit and you can see if you've got the other part of this, got a very connected infrastructure, right? Of having the data connected to all the different systems. Because you can see in the future where you wouldn't interact with your keyboard, or you'd interact with your phone, or a bot that says, "Here, here's my problem," and it goes and finds all the information for you and brings it back. So having that connected infrastructure, I think, is important too.
So I have a question for each of you, and I'm going to answer it myself first, which is, give me an example of analytics that a distributor put in place that revealed an opportunity or problem that they didn't know existed that would turn out to be an important problem that was solved, or important opportunity that was uncovered with analytics. So here's mine. And I ask this when I do keynotes. I ask people, how many of you know how many customers you added and lost last year? To the, exactly how many? Not many hands go up. Then I say, okay, how many of you have a goal for how many customers they're going to stop buying from you and are going to start buying from you this year? Most of the hands go down. And then I say, how many of you have actually someone responsible for hitting those numbers? And honestly, there's maybe one or two or zero people have their hands up. And so when we start walking through what a difference to your profitability it can make by reducing attrition and increasing onboarding of new customers, and then of course growing them, right? They wind up putting initiatives in place and putting someone responsible, and it's pretty transformative to performance over a number of years. So that's my example. So now, I don't know who wants to go first. Give me an example, if you can, of somebody put analytics in place that uncovered an opportunity or problem, and how it benefited from them. Don't have to name any names. I don't know. Kristen, you want to go first? Do you have one?
Sure. Yeah, I've got two quick examples. So
Yeah, good.
one was a team that wanted their sales team, both inside and outside sales, to be more data driven in their approach and a little bit more proactive in how they interact with customers, and using data to enable them to do that. And one of their sort of guiding principles that they decided they wanted to do was, for their outside sales team specifically, they determined that if the customer analytics that they were serving to their outside sales team were not available and digestible from a cell phone, from your mobile phone, that it wasn't helpful. And I thought that was
Yeah,
brilliant, because
I
if you are
agree.
asking folks who
Yeah,
in their normal course of their day need to, pull out their laptop and pull up a humongous spreadsheet of
yeah,
numbers and things like
right.
that to sort
That's
through,
great.
it's just not going to happen, right? And
Yeah,
so they use that as their kind of guiding principle is, can we have this available on mobile, and can it be easily digestible? So, nice graphics, charts, things like that that tell me, oh, this customer, we see a drop here that maybe we want to talk to them about. Just ways to make that really digestible by mobile, I thought was brilliant, and really improved their adoption pretty significantly with that guiding principle in mind. So I really liked that. The other example I have, this is a very simple piece of again, just like using data available to distributors, but just surfacing it to the right person at the right time, is on the purchasing and procurement side, being able to just surface up where we have like open purchase orders at a certain location or warehouse, nothing in stock there, but we can surface where that item might be in stock and provide some further analytics on, does it make sense to move stuff around a little bit. So just visibility of what you've got, and being able to, again, not just have a report that has one single output, but be able to take that one single output, drill in to find that more information, and take some action on it as well. When we work with folks on a lot in the P21 world, and in particular, we work with folks on that one a lot. So
cool. Awesome. All right, good. Brian, same question.
Yeah, a couple of them. The first one really was with our CSR team, And it was really providing them analytics to say, here's what's going to happen next. Here's where the customers is not buying from you. They should be buying from you. And here's what they might be buying from you.
Right.
Kind of what Kristen talked about with White Cup does. And it was information that was not available to these guys. So usually what happened is the marketing guy would say, go upsell these things because we got a lot of them in the warehouse. Well, we transitioned to using the analytics system that allowed us to say, no, sell this thing to this customer. And now this customer hasn't ordered from you in 6 weeks, and they usually order on this 5-week pattern, suggest to reorder. So the information that's out there. So that right there really made a huge difference. And this ties back a little bit to that trust factor too. We outperformed the inside sales team by 12%.
Wow.
Just using that kind of data, because they had the power behind the analytics, but it goes a little bit back to that trust environment where we provided the results and said, here's what this tool does. And here's on a smaller scale, let's make it bigger.
Right.
And leaders who had been around the organization a long time said, no, that's not true. So we literally had to go and create a double blind study and statistically prove that the results were correct. And even then they were like, I still don't believe it. So there's that level of, here's the analytics got served up. We got some good results from it, but the organization wasn't ready to believe it yet.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Sorry, but my data beats your paradigm, right? My data beats your assumption, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So Jose's got another question. What are some current or cutting edge analytics tools that you find helpful in distribution, and what actionable information can they provide?
Sure. I can speak a little bit to that.
Yeah.
On our side, I don't think the answer is going to surprise anybody, right? AI is leading the way and so much of this that we're talking about here. And so it really gets, of course, into the weeds a little bit on different models available and things like that. And, we don't need to go super far down those weeds, but what I would suggest thinking about looking at in your business, things like that it's the same as any kind of technology question, right? Where are we struggling as a business? What are we trying to achieve? Where are we trying to go? And what's the tool to help us get there? So, Brian just mentioned, using analytics for better like cross-sell, upsell recommendations. That's a fantastic place to start with, customer-facing teams, sales teams, things like that. And AI's got tools to help us get there of pattern recognition across large data sets and finding best.
That's in your product now, right?
We do, yeah. White Cup offers that. Yep, out of the box. Yep. Absolutely. But yeah, I would just be looking at, again, tools that can help you ingest a whole lot of data from your ERP, your marketing team, customer service, sales, your website, any of these different data points that you can ingest and putting them together. So you start hearing terms like customer data layer in your business, things like that. Data warehouses, data lakes, all this fun stuff. But looking for tools that are helping you combine those data sets in different usable ways and then apply AI on top of that, I think is really key there.
Yeah. So love the questions from the audience. Please keep them coming. If you have questions, it's a great time to insert them. Brian, once you've used analytics to identify that there's an issue that you need to address or an opportunity you need to jump on, what's the mechanism that works inside of a company to make sure that an action is actually taken?
Yeah, I think to me, and I'm an operations guy at heart, so it's standard work, right? So it's what do you do, right? What do you do with what you get when you see it? And that's got to be something that gets driven through the organization. And that's not usually the way it works. Usually you get a piece of information and somebody says, okay, well, I might do something or I might not.
Right.
What you've got to create is a set of standards that says when this thing happens, this is the next response.
It's a trigger.
Yeah. And it's got to be driven culturally through the company, right? Because you can put a lot of good tools in place and a lot of good information in front of people, but if they don't know what to do with it, or they're not prompted to do something with it, then it's all for nothing, really.
And Kristen, you must see this when you do like reviews with existing customers sometimes that they're saying, well, yeah, we're getting all this data. And you look at it and you go, oh my gosh, look at all this. I mean, are they like missing these signals? Are they, how do you advise them? Because they're your customers. You can't just knock them in the head and say, hey, knuckleheads, you're missing, you got to give
Well, we
them
do with some, but that's, yeah. No.
yeah. We do too. But okay, but how do you train them? I mean, do you tell them like, well, here's best practices on how to set up triggers and how to act? I mean, what do you do to help them get the
Yeah.
most of the output from the analytics you provide?
Two different pieces that we found to be most effective. One is to the point, we're saying give your team all this data, make sure that they have access to the data. There is a level, there's a point where you would just be at data overwhelm, where
Yeah, right.
you open a
Mhm.
dashboard and you get the deer in headlights look because they don't know where to go next. They don't know what to do with that data. So first off is start with those small pieces that make sense for that role. This is where role-based access, dashboard specific to specific roles, that type of thing can really be key. Is honing in what does this person need access to, and feed that in like digestible bits, not everything in the world and everything in the kitchen sink there, and just throw it at them and hope for the best. So paring down, especially when you're first rolling out any of these tools to your team, can be really, really beneficial. So we almost every implementation, onboarding, and sort of re-engagement we do for adoption, we focus on that as, hey, do we have too much here where we're overwhelming? We want to make sure that it's concise, people know what to do with it, and they have an understanding of context around the numbers too. What does this mean? What should I be thinking about here?
Yeah.
That helps a lot. The second piece is tying in automations to help out with next steps. So prompting users, hey, based on this data, we think you should talk to this customer about this thing. Or, hey, we saw you entered this new quote, but we're missing this vital piece of information. Here's a reminder to go put in that piece of information. So just putting in these automations to help prompt some of those behaviors you're looking for, without asking for a ton of just like manual data entry from your folks. That's just never going to happen, right? So make it easy, make it digestible, kind of break it down. And with that, we see that reinforced when in any sort of team meeting, you are using your analytics to drive that conversation. One example of this that we see over and over again is using in our tool, it's called processes, but it's really just a view of your pipeline, whether that's quotes, opportunities, deals, whatever terminology you're using. But automation can put those into a nice little pipeline for you based on different triggers. How likely are they to move along your different process step to step? And using that for like a sales team meeting, for example, of, hey, here's where we're at. We're using the information in front of us to have those conversations and drive those conversations forward. So just backing up what you're doing with how you communicate with your team and what the like structure and tenor of those meetings are, we see helps with that. One, data overwhelm and the context around the numbers, and two, just getting folks into the habit of using some of this a little bit more as well.
So Brian, I know sometimes when we go out and talk to customers about, hey, would you like to look at our customer experience product and get, really precise customer feedback on your performance across your enterprise? And we'll get a funny answer like, well, we want to wait until we put in our new ERP in 6 months. I'm like, why on earth would you not want to know, first of all, what are the priorities and how you configure the ERP? Secondly, don't you want to know how you're performing before the ERP goes in versus after the ERP goes in? And you want to have it in place so that as you fine tune and make the ERP, tailored to your environment, that you're focusing on the right stuff. But for some reason, it's like there's a fear of looking bad, right? And Kristen, I'm going to have you address this too in a minute, please. But What do you think it is about leadership that makes them afraid to put in analytics that may make them look bad? Is this a cultural thing where they're afraid they're going to get in trouble from their bosses? Is it nobody wants to, you get that cringe? It's like I wrote a book and when I get a negative review, I get a cringe, right? I start cringing, right? I mean, nobody wants to hear
Yeah.
that, right? What is driving that sort of reluctance to hear potentially bad news when that's exactly what you need to hear if you want to improve?
Yeah, I think it's exactly that. It's fear of looking bad. And it's that mindset of curiosity over judgment, right? So I'm curious about what the data tells me and being open to the fact that you might not know it all. And AI is leading people down this path and they will eventually get here. And it's the same mindset. It's there might be something that's smarter than me in what I do.
Oh yeah,
And,
right.
and that's an
Interesting.
ego
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
So if you're getting something put in front of you and you're like, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It's hard for you to put that out to the world and say, well, geez, I didn't know it, but here it is.
Yeah.
Especially if you're in a executive leadership position, you're supposed to know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest driver is that kind of, am I a curious leader or am I one that's going to be feared of judgment?
Yeah. That right. One time when we lived in Georgia, there was this possum on our back deck, and I opened the door to look at him, and he looked the other way. Like if he didn't see me, I didn't exist.
He
Right.
wasn't there.
It was really funny. So I would walk around a little bit. I get within his eyesight, and he go, whoop, no. And it's kind of the same thing. It's like, right, I'm gonna
Yeah.
play possum with my data and act like it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So, Kristen, do you run into this too, where people are where you're like, there's almost some resistance about the analytics because people don't want to be embarrassed when they expose operating problems?
Yeah, and I would echo what Brian said. I think it's a little bit of a fear of like, hey, I didn't know that, and I feel like I should have known that. And that's the narrative that you want is to the point of a
Yeah.
kind of a cultural shift in your business. That's the narrative you want to get ahead of, not be behind. Of That's the exact point of these analytics tools. And as we, again, put AI on top of analytics tools and things like that, that's what we're doing is using tools to manage these massive sets of data coming at us at a rate that our brains can't process. So we want
Right.
to let the tools do some of that processing, that pattern recognition across these large data sets, things like that, so that we can take that, act on it, have those better conversations with our customers, be those trusted advisors as part of our
Right.
sales process. We want to use that. And so really it's just freeing up our own brain power, as well as our time and effort to focus on the relationship building rather than on data crunching and feeling like we have to innately know all of these things that
Yeah.
just, especially in distribution, I think is just impossible. There's
Yeah.
the
I
data
agree.
sets, Ian, you mentioned this earlier, the data sets in distribution are humongous. They're huge. Just even if you just think about, your thousands of customers, your thousands of SKUs, your thousands of price points, just
Yeah.
from that perspective alone, it's humongous. And then you add on all of the other pieces that go into that. So it's ripe for using these tools to help us get there for sure. So you got to get ahead of that cultural kind of hurdle that you mentioned there, Ian, of not being willing to see where the data leads us. Yeah.
And I think the other part of that is the data is now all coming together in ways it's never done before.
Mhm.
So all of a sudden,
Mm.
you have to be comfortable with seeing and getting feedback from things you've never been able to see because the data's never ever been able to show you, even if you're a leader that's been really into the data,
Mm.
right? You're going to get data from your ERP and your CRM and all of a sudden from your warehouse, and you're getting it from several different places. And now it's being analyzed differently and it's bringing up different insights that never existed.
Hmm.
Or they were there and you just didn't realize it and see it. So you got to be comfortable with saying, wow, okay, great. Now that we know what it is, we can deal with it. So
Yeah.
back to our friend RP used to say facts are friends, right? And it was
Right.
transparency at every level. And in the true data driven organizations are okay with using that data along the way and not using it as a cudgel, but using it as a learning opportunity and removing the fear.
Yeah. Do you see a lot of people using data as a cudgel, Kristen? And and where you have to coach them to use it to illuminate, not to punish?
It happens a little bit. I would say not too much, luckily. I think
Okay.
the distributors we're working with are excited to give a little bit more to their reps. And again, back to the idea of CRM adoption, that's a huge piece for us is you want your system to give more than it asks from your folks in order for
Yeah,
you to have
right.
actual adoption. And so we're seeing a lot of leaders that are kind of taking that same approach of, hey, we're looking to give more to our team than we're asking, and that's when you get a lot of enthusiasm and use and adoption of some of these tools. We're really veering away from the times
Good.
of you need to log this many tasks in your CRM every week
Yeah,
by
right.
5 p.m. on Friday, and those are kind of days past for where we're at. Where I think folks are using data as a way to show opportunity and uncover opportunity, rather than say, hey, you didn't, you know you missed the mark, that type of thing. I think it's more about
Yeah.
uncovering opportunity, helping folks be more effective.
And where's this going? So, we've got, AI is coming, it's changing everything. I mean, it is overhauling every type of technology, right? So where is analytics going to be and by the way, these are super hard to predict. So sorry to put this question on you, but I'm curious about your opinion. 3 to 5 years from now, or whatever the time frame you choose, because you may, to your point, these may be dog years now, and it's just impossible to see that far out, Kristen. But I don't know. So, Brian, let's start with you. 3 to 5 years out, what is analytics going to look like? And are we ever going to think about it in the same way from a distributor's point of view?
Yeah, it's obviously hard to predict the when.
Yeah, right.
I think it's going to move away from that instant delivery of information that you're starting to get now to the triggers, the autonomous triggers that are going to happen. And when you do have stuff that gets surfaced to you, you're able to respond to it and say, what do I do? What
Mhm.
should I do? Ask it a natural language question, and you're going to get fed the data. So you're going to get, not only you're going to get, your margin dipped five points yesterday, you're going to get why that happened and what do you
Right.
do about it. So I think that is going to be where this is eventually headed. But the systems will give the humans the information it needs to make a decision.
So going from descriptive to prescriptive, but in a much faster in an actionable way, or action is going to take place sometimes without you.
Yeah, and I don't think you're gonna go into any single one system. I think you're any single one piece of the system. It's gonna be a united front, whether that's a bot or whatever that looks like, where you're gonna get the information that you need to be able to act on, and then it's gonna give you an idea about what to do with it. And then you'll be able to say, okay, go do that, and it will go do it.
All right, Kristen. So you own the product roadmap and you're embedded in the customer experience. You must have, I don't know how much you want to share because some of it may be competitively sensitive, but to the degree that you're willing to talk about it, where do you think it's going to go in 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I agree with everything Brian said. Honestly, I think he's right on the
Yeah.
money here. So, I think it is more and more data, right? And that means that we need tools to make that more and more data usable to us as humans. And so, getting away from navigating through systems, pulling multiple reports, automated email sends of reports, I think those are things that are already on their way out and will further be gone, maybe in the next year here. I think it's going to be pretty accelerated. And like Brian said, we're going to be asking questions in our natural language, just like we do with Chat GPT and things like
Yeah.
that. Ask questions, and we get served up these suggestions on how to best act. What's the best, most effective use of my day, my week, things like that.
Hmm.
I think it's just going to get faster and faster with the turnaround on amount of data that we have coming in to give us those. So I think for all of us in the workforce, it really becomes us becoming really thoughtful about our judgment with those suggestions, how we want to interact with those, how we want to be thinking about how that impacts our customers, and just kind of thinking through some of where this is headed, these cycles. 'Cause again, I think it's going to get faster and faster, all of these technology cycles as we go. So just be thinking through how that might look. And again, I think a great way to not get overwhelmed by the possibility of the future is to make sure
Yeah.
we're doing what we can today. And we have that basis of analytics and using data in our business as a baseline that we have in place in our teams today, I think is a great way to start.
Yeah, that's interesting. We did that. So thinking about it from a sort of like if you could query an LLM about your own business, because all your
Mhm.
data was in it. That's a really interesting approach. We put together a deck about what's going on in our company, and so Brian had done some of that, but we were limited to sort of our accounting system data. We don't have all the
Mhm.
extensive customer product supplier data that a distributor has. But you can imagine if you could just like, or even have it proactively tell you, here's where you should focus your time this week, which is the example you use,
Yeah.
Kristen. I mean,
Yeah.
if that's dialed in, then man, that's powerful. But you got to start now because this stuff's, you need to have your data in place and have a good analytics system and be plugged into a CRM because a lot of the action is going to come out of that. In the time to start was before today, but today's the next best date, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. Um, okay, well, this has been a fascinating discussion. Let's see if we have any more questions from the audience or anything that you guys want to add before I talk about our upcoming programs, if I can get the audience to hold on for just a minute. Anything you want to add before we go? No? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's see here. Let me do upcoming programs. So November 11th, we've got data-driven transformation from chaos to competitive advantage. Kristen will be back. We will have other panelists. We don't know who they are yet, but Kristen, can't wait to talk to you about this because this is sort of the next stage of the conversation beyond what we're talking about today. So don't miss that on November 11th. And then we have on November 12th, from Order to Insight, Optimizing the Customer Journey. We'll have Sahitya Senapathy, who's the founder and CEO of Endeavor, on that conversation. So these, we're really bringing I think the most, thoughtful and experienced tech executives in
Sir.
it was been a